Hello. Hey, everybody. Good? I think we're live. All right, we are good. Hello. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. All the other immediate live reaction channels are done. At least I think they are. I know, like, the two big ones I tend to pay attention to are at this point. So here I am if anyone wants to keep talking UFC Freedom 250. I can't compete with their numbers and their reach, so I might sneak in at the end, see if anybody still wants to hang out and talk about it. If not, that's okay. I'll talk to myself. I'm very, very used to that. So I'm Robert Winfrey. I am your host here, and yeah, thanks everyone for listening, watching live after the fact. I don't really care that much. Use my dulcet tones to soothe your infant to sleep. I know some of my other shows have been used for that. Apparently, my voice was very soothing to few children. I'll take it. Hey, anything that helps your kids sleep when you just are desperate for them to go into the land of dreams, I completely understand. We've all been there. So on the agenda for tonight, pretty straightforward. We're going to review UFC Freedom 250, only 7 fights. And we are going to look ahead to the upcoming card this next Saturday, UFC Fight Night 279. Yeah. Headlined by the rematch between Kyoji Horiguchi, no, pardon me, Emmanuel Kape. So we'll give that a preview, and I don't know how much I want to talk about other stuff. We'll see. Some of that's going to be up to anyone who may be watching. Like, if you want certain questions addressed, feel free to ask. I'm happy to interact as long as you have something non-repetitive and ridiculous to say. We can engage in good faith conversation here. So any of that is appreciated. All right, that is what we've got. That is what we're going to be doing. So thank you all very much again. Anything, of course, to interact with the show is appreciated. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon. My boilerplate says that now. Don't know what else to tell you. I don't know how much that helps. I know YouTube says it helps. I don't know how much it actually helps, but I don't know. You kind of just got to do what you're supposed to do in that respect. So any of that's appreciated. Let's jump into this, shall we? Where's my note? There we go. Okay, UFC Freedom 250 from the South Lawn of the White House. A logistical headache, I imagine, for the UFC, but one I think they handled mostly well. I mentioned only 7 fights. As for the predictions, we went 5-2 here. One of those I'm very happy to be wrong about. One I'm annoyed I was wrong about. One I swapped my pick back. The closer we got to the event, the more I kind of just thought, I don't know that I like Steve Garcia's long-term decision making against Diego Lopez. Like, there was reason to have optimism around Garcia's chances. I think that played out, but I don't know that he could sustain it. Which kind of that played out. You could hear me talk about it last week when I was previewing this. I should have gone with Cyril Gane. I could see what the problems were going to be for Pereira. I knew what they were. They largely played out. I should have identified that better, and I didn't, and that one bothers me. I am happy to be wrong about the main event. Because in fairness, I did identify a handful of the ways that I thought Gaethje could give Topuria problems. I just didn't think it would. There were 2 things he did. We'll get into them specifically. But there were a few things I did correctly identify that would be problems for Topuria. I just didn't think that it would matter as much as it did. Again, we'll get into some of the reasoning why. So 5-2, I'm okay with that for a 7-fight card. Year to date, we are now 174, 58-3 with 2 no contests. Only one underdog won. That was the main event. It was a big underdog because the co-main event was a pick'em, and all the rest were favorites. I mean, a lot of these were not hard to pick. So I don't feel. I never feel great when it's like, oh, pick a bunch of favorites. Like, anybody could do that. That's not hard. I'm happy with some of my. Well, as a general rule, I'm kind of happy with the analytical points I brought up last time, but wish I'd had the courage of my convictions. Let me just put it like that, because the Gone one is the big one. Like I should have got that one right. Anyway, so that's where we're prediction wise. I want to talk about the fights first, then some of the ancillary stuff we can hit after that. So main event, Justin Gaethje defeats undefeated UFC lightweight champion Ilia Topuria, corner stoppage between rounds 4 and 5. It's not often, it's not impossible. You don't get stories like this in MMA all that often. I can think of 2 others that were just long-time guys, been around forever, fairly beloved by the time it was all said and done, and swinging the axe, eventually get their final, they're kind of like last hurrah for full like UFC title glory, and make the most of it. The other 2 that come to mind, Michael Bisping's the obvious one. That was a bit more on short notice, but it was also a similarly, Bisping was given, I think, a slightly better chance than Gaethje was, but you got similar vibes in that. Like, everyone kind of thought Rockhold had just beat Chris Weidman. He's going to be champ for a while. He's big. He's talented. He's already beaten Michael Bisping. Bisping's coming in on short notice, and then what happens. The other one, and maybe this might be a little bit more apropos in some respects, but I didn't score the fight for him, but I was just over the moon for him when he got the belt. Robbie Lawler. When Robbie Lawler beat Johnny Hendricks in their rematch, which again, I did not score for Lawler. I just wasn't going to get up in arms over it because it was close enough. Didn't hate it. But Robbie Lawler had been around forever. I had seen some of his early UFC stuff. I followed a lot of his stuff outside the UFC. I mean, I remember him falling asleep at, the Strikeforce press conferences because he was just bored and disinterested. And then he gets to the UFC, reinvents himself back down at welterweight. He'd been at middleweight for a big chunk of that time in like Strikeforce and Elite XC and places like that. And gets a shot at the vacant belt against Hendricks, comes up a little short. Fairly a little bit short. Hendricks sits down. He has to recover from an injury, I think. Lawler wins another fight. Lawler gets that rematch, wins, I think, in somewhat disputed decision, has 2 of the all-time great welterweight title fights in a row. I mean, that fight with Rory McDonald is, if you like La Sangre, and I am not opposed to bloodletting in my blood sport, those 2 cut each other to ribbons. And then he has that all-timer with Carlos Condit, which I think Condit won. I will die on that hill, and I will not die alone, but by the way. And then, it all kind of comes crashing down when he fights Tyron Woodley, but like, guy who'd been around forever, beloved, respected, action fighter, finally puts it all together late in his career, finally gets a push into the title picture, comes up short, sticks around, somewhat improbably sticks around for that rematch with Hendricks, and makes as much of it as he can. And you kind of just got to throw it to the judges if it goes the distance. And I didn't think scoring it for him was wrong. I just didn't score it for him personally. But this is kind of, for crying out loud, Justin Gaethje's been around forever. I've been watching him since his World Series of Fighting days. Because I forget which one of his fights it was. There was one of his fights that I kind of like heard the rumblings about, like, hey, watch this. This is nuts. So I watched it, like, yeah, this is nuts. And the general tenor of this was, from people who knew more than I did, was, yeah, he does this every time. So I watched every one of his World Series of Fighting fights, like the stuff with Luis Palomino, which is great. Gaethje's stuff is tremendous. He gets to the UFC and he does this again, like that. He's just who he is, then runs into a bit of a wall, rebuilds himself a little bit, retools, pushes through gets close to the title level, then has to fight Tony Ferguson on somewhat short notice. Tony Ferguson's the boogeyman at this point. Fights him for an interim belt with the prize at the end of that being, hey, go fight Khabib. And delivers one of the most resonant, impactful performances I've ever witnessed. I mean this. Like, there's a handful of MMA fights that watching them, like, sticks with you. There's a profundity to them. Something about the totality of that fight against Tony Ferguson, the setting, all of it. Because that was, empty arena in Jacksonville, Florida. Everything had gravitas, everything had weight. And he changes Tony Ferguson's career trajectory over the course of as long as that fight lasts. And he gets to fight Khabib for the belt. Good luck. Does not go well for him. And Khabib chokes him out. Khabib retires. Gaethje has to go back, kind of winning his way up through things, and he gets another shot. Against this time it's Charles. Unfortunately for him, this time it's Charles Oliveira, who's in the middle of his big run as the guy. And Oliveira allegedly misses weight. Still not sure how I feel about that one. So Gaethje can win the belt. Oliveira is stripped of the belt, and what's he run into? Charles Oliveira as a buzzsaw. And he does some success. Like, he drops Oliveira, but can't finish the job and gets finished. Then, he does some side questy stuff. Like, he does the BMF belt with Dustin Poirier, knocks him out. Beautiful head kick. Then he fights Max, and Max just, one of the most spectacular knockouts you'll ever see is what Max Holloway did to Justin Gaethje. And he kind of is like, okay, builds back up a little bit. Beats Rafael Fiziev for a second time, and then starts making noise. Like, I want the belt or I'm going to retire. Like, this is all I want. I'm senior in my career. I've done a lot of damage to myself and other people. This is kind of the last thing. And if I can't get there, I don't want to be doing this anymore, which, you know what? Fair enough. Problem is, the UFC generally doesn't care. 99 times out of 100. Fighters are like, no, I want the belt or I'm retiring. The UFC will be like, by all means, don't let the door hit you in the ass. Like, they don't care. There's a few that they will consider. And the UFC's on the outs, like the UFC and Arman Tsarukyan are shaky. The UFC likes Paddy Pimblett. Paddy's been making noise at Ilia Topuria. After Topuria, freaking monster to that point, tears through featherweight, knocks out Alexander Volkanovski, knocks out Max Holloway. I mean, knocks him out. Like, you don't do that to Max. Nobody does that to Max. Ilia Topuria did. Goes up to lightweight. Hey, here's Charles Oliveira. Stops him in less than 3 minutes. In the first round of a boxing bout, timing-wise, knocks him out. Brutally. He's the younger, slick, talented, hyped up. I mean, we're all talking about Ilya fighting Islam Makhachev. That's kind of the thing that's kicking around, because Ilya moved up and Makhachev then also vacated and moved up. And we kind of went, we really wanted to see that fight. And we didn't get it. Now we might not, but. So Gaethje, late career, is like, okay, I want the belt or I don't want to do this anymore. Just fine calculus for him if that's what he wants to go. He then gets an interim title shot against Paddy Pimblett. And a lot of us picked Paddy. I think I did. And Gaethje beats him. And I mean, that's not surprising. Like, again, I picked Paddy, but if you told me Gaethje was going to beat Paddy Pimblett, I would have believed you very easily. Like, there's all kinds of problems with what Paddy does relative to what Justin does. Like, there's plenty there, even beforehand, there were plenty of ways to see how Gaethje would win that fight. But now it's like, okay, go fight Ilia Topuria. Younger, undefeated, monster run, one of the best 3-fight winning stretches you'll find in anywhere in the sport. Knocks out Volk, knocks out Max, knocks out Charles Oliveira. It's hard to get better than that. There are a few other instances you could argue, and I'd be sympathetic to your argument. I mean, Jones making Shogun Rua tap to strikes, choking out Rampage, and was it Machida he beat after that? It was somewhere in that vicinity was the Machida fight. I can't remember if there was one between Rampage and Machida. I think it was just those three. So again, like you just ragdoll Shogun, you ragdoll and you finish Shogun Rua with strikes in 3 rounds, make him tap out to him, like brutal. You choke out Rampage, former champion. You choke out Lyoto Machida. Like I'd accept that argument. Speaking of Shogun, like the 3 fights Shogun won and the way he won them to win the Pride Grand Prix, you could argue that one at that time, what he did there. Oh yeah. So you can find cases that are similar in quality to what Topuria had done coming into this. But again, man, Volk hadn't lost at featherweight ever. And Topuria knocked him out. Max had never been stopped with strikes. And Topuria knocked him out. And he stopped Charles Oliveira. It's not just that he stopped him, he did it inside of 3 minutes. Like that's the fourth. You have a guy 30, Gaethje's 37, an old warhorse, beloved, action fighter, years and miles, very clearly added up on his body, against this force that we're all kind of like looking past. When I talked about this fight last week, when I previewed it, I said, here's a few things that I think Gaethje could do to mess with Topuria a little bit. The calf kicks are a thing because Topuria's got a wide, slightly lower boxing stance that's a little bit heavier on the front leg or just heavier on your feet in general. You're not bouncy, generally speaking. That's a thing. Topuria does a lot of ducking, especially when he tries to enter the pocket, and Gaethje has a good uppercut game. That was definitely a thing. There were tools. I mean, I'm not the only one who identified these. I just didn't think it was going to matter too much at the end of the day because Topuria's, I said this at the time, like what separates Topuria from a lot of other people is not just the fact that he hits hard. Yeah, sure, he hits hard. His delivery system for the power is what separates him. And that's what was missing here, by the way. We'll talk about it in more detail in a second, but Gaethje then, he's a guy who's been kind of stumping for, patriotism in the United States for a while. He started making that, he's always, never been shy about being proud of being an American, but he kind of started banging the drum a little bit when he fought Edson Barboza because this is one of the best Brazilian guys. I'm one of the best American guys. This will be great. And he kind of wanted a little bit of that narrative out there when they went into that fight. And in fact, one of the things he said after the fight was I was happy to represent the United States against one of the best of Brazil. So it's a thing he's kind of been, it's a drum he's been banging a little bit. And it comes together now that he was not the deserving number 1 contender absent holding the interim title. This should have been Arman Tsarukyan, meritocratically. Let's not beat around the bush there. Gaethje was not even the 3rd, I think, best lightweight rankings-wise prior to holding the interim belt. I mean, he lost to Charles Oliveira. Somewhat uncontroversially lost to Charles Oliveira. He got knocked out by Max Holloway. Very non-controversially. It wasn't like he just slipped on a banana peel at the last second. He lost 3 of those 5 rounds and then gets knocked out at the last second. Yeah, he rebounded okay from those. Bless him for that, by the way. But even now, gun to my head, is Justin Gaethje the best lightweight in the UFC? I don't think he is. He is the champion. The assumption that the champion is the best fighter in the weight class is not, I don't find that to be accurate. Sometimes it is. It's not always. I mean, I don't think anyone thought Matt Serra was the best fighter at welterweight after he beat George when he held the belt after beating GSP. He was the champion. Full stop. He earned that. Was he the best fighter in the weight class? No. That's how this goes. So at the moment, like even now, like is Justin Gaethje the best lightweight in the world? I don't think he is, skill for skill. But I have watched that man for years. I have watched him throw away his quality of life, dedicate brain cells, blood, and so many things to this enterprise and to the fans. I can be critical of, elements of Justin Gaethje. I've been critical of some of his fighting decisions. I've been critical of some of his, worldview and some of the, actions he's taken outside the cage. Because if you want to put some of that stuff out there, it's open for commentary. But in the cage, in the sport, Justin Gaethje has always been a gift. A man devoted to going out there and doing violence. On its face. Violence for its own sake. Like, yeah, to win the fight, but he loves to fight. And fighters like that are a blessing. And there's vanishingly few of them. They're not gone, but there's fewer and fewer of them. Justin Gaethje is one of those people. And watching this fight, the roller coaster that I kind of went on, because again, I picked Topuria, thought he would win. Then Topuria fights the way he does in the first round. And Justin Gaethje did two very, very smart things in the first round. One of these came back to bite him a little bit later, but the first thing was he didn't come out and just throw leg kicks. I think that would have been too predictable, and I think Topuria was waiting on those to counter. Like he was kind of anticipating that. The other thing he did was finally Justin Gaethje came out in the first round and started jabbing. Previously, when Gaethje's jab has been a real factor in fights, it's never been early. I mentioned this, I think it was the second time he fought Fiziev because it kind of showed up there too. But I talked a little bit I noted this when he fought Tony Ferguson. The conventional wisdom when it comes to talk boxing, but striking in general, you use the jab to chip away at the edges to find fault lines to then deliver power. You jab, jab, jab. Oh, there's a little opening, power shot, big chunk falls off. That's kind of that's the conventional wisdom. It's conventional wisdom for a reason. It works. Gaethje against Tony Ferguson, against Rafael Fiziev, other times, he does the opposite. He would come out and bombs. Even when he's not doing the hurricane thing that he did earlier in his career before he settled and got more serious about his power. He would just throw bombs to knock off big chunks, and then refinement was the jab. Like, oh, that's where I want to attack now that I've carved out this big space with the power. Jab, 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 and just whittle it down. Again, he did backwards from conventional wisdom, which is fine. It worked for him. Wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but you don't fight like everybody. You fight like you. And I think there was probably an assumption that he was going to do that again. And he comes out, he's judicious. He doesn't throw a leg kick early. He jabs a lot. And I think Topuria wasn't expecting that. Then there's the game plan of Topuria. There's a few things he did well in the first round. A lot of forward pressure. Now, Justin Gaethje fighting off the back foot is not is not helpless. But it's not ideal for him to be back to the fence. Like if he goes there if he gets hurt, because of course you do, but not ideal for his offense. So a lot of the forward pressure was a good idea. Good. he landed a couple of very nice calf kicks, did Topuria, which is a good thing. Like Topuria's kicking game is not a continuous part of his game plan or his striking system, but you don't need a lot to affect what you want to affect. And he got I guess he got what he was after, either like damage wise or read wise, after just a couple of them, because he does land a couple. He backs him up, and the backing up is good, but I'm speculating. Okay, I don't have inside knowledge. My hunch about about what Topuria was doing in that first round in particular kind of goes as follows. I think he was under the impression that he hits harder and Gaethje's durability is compromised. So I'm okay trading a little bit with this guy because he's going to fall over first. Spoiler, that's a bad read. But I think that's kind of what the thought process was. I'm guessing a little bit there. And then that's a big, like, high order thing. Like, okay, we'll trade a little bit, but I hit harder. In general, my delivery is better. This will win. I will win a war of attrition this way over time, because he's not as durable as I am, and I don't think he's going to hit me as often as he thinks he's going to hit me. Bad read. Is ultimately what happened there. They split a few jabs, but there's a few uppercuts that Gaethje lands, because he starts doing. He's really sneaky about this, mind you. He kind of does the Frankie Edgar knee tap. It's not really. It's only sort of a knee tap, but one hand reaches for the shoulder, the other hand goes low to the knee, and ideally you like tap that, lift, and then push, knee tap. But he reaches for that, and then as you defend, this turns into a collar tie, and this hand that's down at your knee just comes into an uppercut. It's real sneaky. It's real damaging. And he messes up Topuria's right eye with that in the first round. Topuria figures a few things out towards the end of the first. He gets Gaethje real backed up. He starts landing a little bit more. He starts timing the jab a little better. And he hits the body real hard a few times. Man, Topuria's body work is genuinely beautiful. I mean, it must be hell on earth to get hit with them. But if you're just watching, gotta love the rib roasters. Who doesn't love ribs? So he gets a little bit of that. That's kind of the story of the second round. Is Gaethje comes out, looks to sort of do more of the same, like get his jab going, stay a little bit mobile, because these two fought at a fairly high pace, and they both started like wearing down a little bit. Topuria also bulked up and ahead of this fight, and I think that cost him down the stretch. But second round, he gets Gaethje against the fence, and he unloads to the body, and just doubles Justin Gaethje over. Just, oh boy, rides him down, gets on top. And I know some people are going to kill Topuria for the decision making instead of just like standing back up. I'm not going to kill him for it. Justin Gaethje's submission defense is, historically speaking, like not the best. If you get him to that point and hurt, this is a very, very, very viable path to get him. There were a couple of specific choices that Topuria made that he gets to full mount, and Gaethje goes to give his back, and Topuria uses a half Nelson to stop him from rotating all the way over. That was a little surprising to me. I thought he might just go for the back, because getting the choke on the guy who's like really hurt it's one of the few ways you can reliably get the rear naked choke in MMA, is to have somebody hurt. He kept mount, didn't land too much ground and pound, landed some, got high, threatened an armbar, couldn't quite get it, threatened the mounted triangle choke, and I imagine Justin Gaethje had flashbacks, because that's what Khabib did to him. And just something about the position, I couldn't quite see in great detail, but he couldn't quite get the legs in proper position. Like, the threat was there for Topuria, but he couldn't get the last bit that is really necessary to really lock some of that stuff down. Gaethje ends up surviving the round, but again, badly hurt to the body. Even acknowledged it between, like he goes back to sit down with Trevor Whitman and goes, "Well, that was a good body shot." And you gotta love fighters that can just talk about what's going on like that. It is lovely. Third round though, Topuria is a little fatigued. Grappling is very tiring in general, and again, I think he had bulked up ahead of this fight. You can see the change in his physique. My hunch is somewhat in anticipation of some kind of a fight with Ilia Topuria, either moving up to welterweight or a catchweight affair, something like that. And he was starting to like get bigger for it. But he slows down in the third. Slowing down against Justin Gaethje is, boy, is that a recipe for disaster. Gaethje's jab was starting to work, is working again, but he starts bringing the two behind it. And he just clobbers Topuria over and over. And Topuria's eyes were kind of messed up after the first. The right eye, and they're like cut on the bridge of the nose. Dude, he just unloads on him in the third. Uppercuts in the clinch, a few knees to the body. That clubbing right hand just started to get the timing a lot better. Topuria's fainting a lot less. One of the other things in the third round, between rounds 2 and 3, Trevor Whitman tells Gaethje, like, okay, we're not backing up anymore. Like, you go forward. And you can leg kick now because he's forgot that they're coming. And I think that's when he landed like the one calf kick that he threw. But he just, again, Topuria reaches for a couple of takedowns, gets stuck in a front headlock, gets hurt, dropped, stuck in that. Gaethje uses that, like, it's not quite, because he's kind of off to the side instead of on the back, it's not really a power half in the traditional sense, but it's kind of like a power half Nelson or a power Nelson. Power Nelson usually has two, but he's got that from like that kind of the front headlock position. One hand on the back, the other one over here. He caught Paddy Pimblett in this position all the time when they fought and just landed punches on the mat. That's what he did here to Topuria. Just battered him. Topuria's right eye was, again, kind of messed up after the first round, cut up. His left eye after that second round was a mess. I mean, after the third round, excuse me, mess. The doctor like was looking at stopping the fight. Between rounds, Topuria said, like, I can't see. And here's the thing about that. If you say that, you have to be careful about it, but it is also important to tell your corner that. Like, I can't see at the moment. Now, sometimes that's temporary. Like, there's blood in my eye, I can't see out of it, please clear it. That's not the same as like my eye is swollen shut and I can't see. Those are two very different things. And if you're communicating in, language with a language barrier, because he's speaking in Spanish, if the doctor doesn't speak Spanish and he's kind of like half going by what's being translated to him, there's some stuff that can get lost in translation there a little bit. So they have a look at it. There was some weirdness here because they go the minute between rounds. And then they wind up giving Topuria like another minute to recover while the doctor checks on him, which should not have taken as long as it did. That was a whole thing. So that felt weird. But they initially go like, "Oh, you can't see. We're going to stop it." And Topuria's like, "No, I can see. Like, give me a sec here. Like, let the corner do a little bit of work," which is also a fair request. So the corner does their thing. They check on him again. Again, this all just takes too long is kind of the big gripe. So he gets another minute. Normally you only get 1 minute between rounds. He gets a full other 60 seconds. But he can see enough, I guess, for the doctor to be like, okay, we can go. That fight could have been stopped after the third, for the record. He couldn't see if he could see, it was not very well. And he fights better in the fourth than he did in the third. Give Topuria credit there, but he gets a little bit back to the body work. The problem is at range, he can't get a read on Gaethje's right hand anymore because Gaethje started to vary the timing just a little bit, and Gaethje is just punishing him in the eyes and the face over and over again. Landing up, the left eye by the time the fourth round ends is basically swollen shut. The right eye, like there's a big displacement over here too. Like that eye's messed up. This eye's basically closed. Near the end of the fourth round, Gaethje blocks a takedown again, kind of like gets that, it gets the power half. I don't know if that's a power half or more of a wrestling grommet. I'd have to double check. But he gets that, gets off to the side and lands this knee to the body that is just the most brutal thing. I mean, just winds up. He's standing. He's got all the leverage in the world for this, and just crushes into the left side, so the spleen side of Ilia Topuria. Like that's like spleen and kidney because he's kind of around the back, not near the spine, but like you get a little bit more towards the back, the dorsal side. You get into the kidney, and that is bad. As soon as that lands, Topuria like stops trying to get up. It's short time in the round, but like he's trying to get up. He gets that shot to the ribs and he sinks back down. Like something might have gotten busted or displaced there. A few more shots to the body, and round ends. Topuria had there's big stretches of the very end of the fourth was real bad for him, but there's other stretches of the fourth where he was doing pretty decent work again. He got back on the forward pressure. He got a little bit back to feinting. He got a little bit back to his body work. It just wasn't really sustainable. And he started panic wrestling a little bit. And again, that's a real bad thing to do against, Justin Gaethje in particular. And Topuria's corner intelligently between rounds 4 and 5 waves this off. I mean, Topuria's face was destroyed. I mean, just a mess. Justin Gaethje just changes people. He just, it is his gift. When Khabib said, I want to change Conor's face, he didn't. He beat he did a pretty decent job beating him up, and then, obviously finished him. Justin Gaethje changes your face. You do not. I don't know too many people that fought him and looked the same when they were done. If he got you out of there with like one punch, maybe you were okay. But dude, if you stick around against him, this, you can't use facial recognition to get into your phone anymore. Like you got to change that. You are not you anymore after multiple rounds of fighting Justin Gaethje. He just changes you. And man, again, what do you say about Justin Gaethje? A man who sacrificed so much of himself in the pursuit of glory in this arena, who, massively altered the careers of other fighters. He changed Tony Ferguson. Full stop. I mean, he almost retired Dustin Poirier with that head kick. Not quite. Poirier, to Poirier's credit, because Poirier is, insane. Came back, kept fighting, bless Dustin Poirier because he's awesome. Man, he lost that fight with Eddie Alvarez, but dude, he messed up Eddie Alvarez in that fight too. Like the end of that fight, Eddie Alvarez is the one whose face is all busted up and this part of his cheek is all swollen. And that was real bad. I mean, Eddie kind of persevered. Sorry, Cosmic chiming in. Favorite fighter, Ilia Topuria lost badly, totally depressed and devastated. How can you handle this? The sun's going to come up tomorrow. I'm sorry. We've all had our favorites lose badly. If you stick around this sport long enough, it happens. It sucks. It just does. I can give you, like, my advice is fairly simple on this front. Be careful how much you invest into individual fighters in this sport, because this happens a lot. And you will get, if you really invest a lot in that, your psychology lessons. Okay. If you're that depressed, my general advice is no, do not scroll the internet. It's terrible for you when you're super depressed. Take a few deep breaths and understand the world goes on. Yes, these losses to fighters you really like are not pleasant. You're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to go to work or school or whatever it is you do. Your world will go on. You will continue. Your routine will continue. It will be okay. This is not a thing this will only affect you as much as you allow it to affect you. It's one of the reasons I personally don't have a lot of like big emotional investment in MMA fighters anymore, because personally, I have an unhealthy relationship with that stuff. I don't take as much joy in their success as I do get devastated by their setbacks. It's unequitable for me. You may be different, but in general, be very, very careful overly investing into this. Take a few deep breaths, have a shower, go to bed. Sleep I've found to be a very effective like deterrent for temporary depression. Something bad happens, you stew with it for a little bit, not too long. Process, grieve. If you're really invested in this, like, go ahead and grieve. It's okay. Accept that everyone loses. It'll be all right. And don't allow this to really like mess with you, because unless you have like a personal connection to the guy, in which case, I mean, like, you know him personally. If this is going to be a part of your life, like what happened directly and immediately affects you because you know him, that's different. If you're just a guy watching this, I'm assuming, this doesn't affect you. Like, you're going to get up, you're going to go continue on tomorrow. And just, again, breathe. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be upset about stuff like this. Let it go. You do kind of just have to, like, what about this bothers you? Acknowledge it. Then accept what you can control, and you can control your response to this. You can't control jack about a fight like this. Nothing. You are purely at the mercy of what is done out there by other people that you have no influence over. So why are you letting it have tremendous influence over you? That's overly logical to try and tackle a minor depressive episode. I'm very well aware. But when you start getting stuff like this, it's best to challenge it. Not when you challenge like negative thought patterns and depressive stuff, like, you don't try to fight demons with puppies. You look at the depressive thoughts and these kind of things and you make them justify themselves to you logically. Like, actually challenge them instead of just trying to drown them out. That's the best way I've found to deal with this stuff. Because depressive episodes make sense sometimes if you've got like long-term depressive issues or other mental health concerns. You have to understand, like, your mental health issues, your depression, your bipolar, your schizophrenia, your whatever it is, it's lying to you. That's what it does. It tells you something other than what is true. It's sort of the defining characteristic of a mental illness is incompatibility with observable reality. It is lying to you. It's what it does. It's what, again, almost all mental illnesses do this. The question is, how effective are they to you? And which parts of the brain and whatnot do they involve? Because schizophrenia is different because it actually involves sensory issues. But it's lying to you about what's going on. Like, there isn't actually the curtains aren't actually talking to you. They can't. Your brain is lying to you. It just feels real because you maybe don't know any better, and maybe that's the part of its brain you're accessing. If you're dealing with depression, your depression is lying to you. This is what it does. It will create catastrophic scenarios, worst case scenarios, worst case scenarios, and then it will feed these to you in a rapidly accelerating pattern. It starts with something that might even be reasonable, then it goes less reasonable, unreasonable, hyper unreasonable, catastrophic. Why are we even here? At least that's kind of how mine has gone. And arresting that cycle and that spiral is like, no, you find as soon as it becomes slightly unreasonable, challenge it. Like, oh no, I'm depressed because I'm single. That's not unreasonable. I'm going to die alone. Whoa, 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 whoa. Justify that. Because there's way too many variables. There are way too many other things going on for that to be the conclusion you immediately reach from there. So challenge depressive thoughts. Grieve if they're temporary. Like, it's okay to be like upset that a thing you wanted to happen didn't happen. Don't let it rule you. Don't let it control you, because you can't control any of that. You, my friend, have zero input on what happened. Nothing you could have done would have changed what happened, even the slightest little bit, assuming you have no direct input. And unless you're like a friend or in his camp or anything like that, you don't have any. Don't let things you can't control influence you any more than they absolutely have to. And on the emotional level, that means basically not. So just chill. You'll be okay. Again, the sun will come up. Depending on where you are in the world, it already has. Earth keeps spinning. Earth keeps moving around the sun. We all keep moving through space. It will be okay. I remember, I can tell you the first time I had that like axis shift. Weirdest thing in the world. And, well, related to fights. When Anderson Silva got knocked out by Chris Weidman. Because I never saw that coming. Never in a million years would have predicted that. And I was stunned. Anderson, not my favorite fighter, but it was just so. It was a little bit like walking outside and like a winged snake flies by. Like, what the? And then after a little bit, I went, okay, like, I'm going to go to bed because I have to sleep. The sun's going to come up. I'm going to go do what I was going to go do on Sunday anyway. I know what I should have done that Sunday. I know what I don't think I did at the time. Like, I know what I should do. And then I'm going to, talk with my friends about the fights because I do the podcast. And there were other people on it besides me at that point in time. So we talked about it. And like, it all keeps going. Like, this might hurt if you're a fan. I get it. It's one of the reasons I don't have like fandoms, because I got sick of being hurt because I never got as much joy as I did hurt. It's a calculation on my part. Yours might be different. You're going to be okay, man. Like, this happens to everybody. It's okay to be sad. Don't do anything stupid. Like, don't be one of those people who like breaks a TV because a fighter lost. Like, that's real dumb. Don't do that. Just take some deep breaths. Be depressed for a minute or two. Move on to acceptance as quickly as possible, because the sun will come up and you will still have to do whatever you were going to do anyway. That's sort of my general take on this. So I hope that helps for whatever it's worth. Anyway, sorry, back to the fight itself. Yeah, Toporia's face got messed up. Justin Gaethje, guy, 37, been around forever. This is his third shot at the full belt. He's a 2-time interim champion. He ran into Khabib the first time. He ran into the middle of like Charles Oliveira's hot streak the second. He just had some bad luck. He got knocked out cold by Max Holloway after a fight. He, took some damage in that one. He's had years of abuse and wars and all these accolades, all these, bonuses, all this stuff that we love him for. And I think we all kind of just got to the point where it's like, yeah, but he's never going to get over the hump. He got close. You know, the Kape is like he was 2 leg kicks away from really hurting Khabib's, leg. And yeah, Khabib. He dropped Charles Oliveira when they fought. He'd done that a little differently, maybe. Now he's got to fight frickin' Ilya Topuria. It's not going to happen. That particular thing is just never quite going to happen for him, and it did. And I don't get emotional at MMA very much anymore for a lot of reasons. When they stopped that fight, watching what he did, I'm not going to pretend I didn't yeah, I got a little teary. I didn't like break down weeping, but that affected me emotionally, which doesn't happen to a lot of fights. Almost never positively. Just my relationships with the sport. Watching him finally climb the mountain. And I don't want to delve too deeply into the politics of this, but for a guy who'd been, kind of waving the USA flag for several years, to do this at this venue, in this setting, against that guy, like, this is movie stuff. You could script this in a movie and no one it would be too unbelievable. Like, this guy gets his last crack at the belt. He's fighting this young, unbeaten, really damaging juggernaut that has violently finished 2 guys who finished you decisively. And it's on the White House lawn on Flag Day in the year we're celebrating 250 years of America, in front of the president with your family there. And you overcome almost getting stopped in the second round. Like, this is movie stuff. This is Rocky going to Russia and knocking out Ivan Drago, turning the whole crowd in his favor along the way, by the way. Like, no one would believe this if you did it as a script. It would be too ridiculous. Life is stranger than fiction, man. So I don't know what's next for him. I would like him to retire. Like, you're never going to beat this moment. What are you going to do out of another fight with somebody else? I mean, okay, if there's a lot of money involved, maybe, but short of that, like, this is your movie ending. This is it. MMA fighters never stop at the right time. Almost never. Like, Khabib retires the fight after he loses his dad, getting a big finish in the Middle East in front of his family. Like, okay, but Dan Henderson does not retire knocking out Hector Lombard in front of his hometown, basically, in right around Temecula, California. He could have. He didn't. Said he had a weird title fight with old man Bisbing when he was older man Hendo, and whole thing. I hate that time period for a lot of reasons. Israel Adesanya doesn't retire after finally knocking out Poatan. He finally beat that guy, got that monkey off his back, regained the title. He was the first guy in middleweight history to do that. And he did it against his arch rival, who's kind of been like dogging him across kickboxing and now MMA, who just handed him his first stoppage loss in MMA. And he finally gets that. And he does it the way like he's nearly stopped him with that same sequence before. Finally does it. There's your mountaintop. Did he stop? No. Hasn't won since. This is just what we do. I don't know that. Again, like, if Gagey wants another fight, I am not here to tell him how to live his life. I'm just saying, like, if you want the best exit, that's it. You're never gonna top this moment, ever. What would top it? I don't know. I genuinely don't know what would be a bigger moment. You finally did it at a unique venue in a wholly unique atmosphere and event. In one of the few instances when the UFC actually put forth a modicum of effort into pomp, presentation, and pageantry, which they never do because they're boring. And I'm just saying, like, you're never going to beat that high. No, you're never going to get a better setting. I don't know what personally might not rise to a higher level, but this was also fun fact. This was the first time the lightweight title changed hands in the cage since Conor McGregor beat Eddie Alvarez. That division has been in such a weird place. Because if we track this, Conor beats Eddie, the defining performance of Conor McGregor's career is what he did to Eddie Alvarez. More than anything, like, you can say there were other fights that were more entertaining. I believe you. Like, the best singular performance Conor ever turned in was that fight with Eddie Alvarez in Madison Square Garden. That's the last time until tonight that belt changed hands in the cage. Because what happens after that? Conor's stripped. Khabib wins a vacant belt. Khabib vacates after going undefeated. Charles Oliveira wins the vacant belt. Oliveira loses the belt on the scale. Again, there was some weirdness there, but he does. Islam Makhachev wins the vacant belt. Islam Makhachev vacates the belt. That's the belt that Topuria wins. So there has for years now. Geez, when was that? When was that Conor Eddie fight? That was almost 10 years ago. It was UFC 205, 2016. It was the year I was after, not the event number necessarily. For almost a full decade, the lightweight title has not had strict continuity of lineage. It's been disrupted for any number of reasons, some of which were understandable, some of which were just bad luck. Like, nobody could beat Khabib, and Khabib decided he was done. You have no control over that. But, dude, like, guy loses his belt on the scale, and, like, iffy weight call there, then, Islam defends a couple of times and moves up and vacates. That's not great, but so you got a full 10 years where that title has not changed hands in the cage. And finally that happened. So it wouldn't be great necessarily for Gagey to then retire and vacate it, but I don't know. Again, I don't know what would top this moment. Big paycheck maybe, but like, I mean, if you wanted to extend this to other events, like, Muhammad Ali didn't stop boxing after he beat George Foreman. In fact, like, his next fight was the brutal, like a couple of brutal fights with Joe Frazier that they kind of gloss over, because the crowning emotional moment is he beats the young unstoppable monster in George Foreman. And the fact that Muhammad Ali kept fighting for way, way, way too long, nobody likes for their, biopic. So the movies always end there. And look, if I'm making an Israel Adesanya movie, yeah, I stop it after he knocks out Poetan. So it's up to Gagey what he wants to do, obviously, but I think clearly retirement has been a possibility for a while. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I have no specifics. This was your fight of the night. So they finally posted the bonuses. This was your fight of the night. Absolutely deserved it. all the bonuses apparently for this card being paid out in cryptocurrency. Can I tell you how much I don't like that? No me gusta. Do not want. Gaethje also got a performance of the night. Yeah. He got double bonused. I think he's back now to having more bonuses than fights. Dude, Justin Gaethje is part of a generation of lightweights that blessed this sport. He's not quite the last of them out there still doing it, but he nearly is. Dude, Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler, and dude, Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler killed each other in Bellator. Watch those. Go look up those fights if you haven't seen them. They're great. Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier, Paul Felder, Jim Miller. These just, Miller's lower on the card now, but like action-oriented, fan-friendly fighters willing to be in the trenches. Find the soft touch in Justin Gaethje's UFC run. He debuts against Michael Johnson and has a wild fight. And he loses to Eddie Alvarez. He loses to Dustin Poirier. He knocks out, it was James Vick next. So he gets through guys like, Vick and Barboza, and there's somebody I'm missing in there. Hang on, because I want to do this right. Yeah, Vick. Oh, yeah, he knocks out Vick, knocks out Barboza, knocks out Cerrone, knocks out Tony Ferguson, loses to Khabib, beats Michael Chandler. That's a wild fight, by the way, UFC 268. Gets choked out by Charles Oliveira, beats Fiziev, head kicks Poirier to win the BMF belt, gets knocked out by Max Holloway, beats Fiziev again, slightly short notice, beats Paddy Pimblett, gets Ilia Topuria to have to stop on the stool, gets his corner to throw in the towel. Find me the easy fight there. Anywhere in there. The closest you can kind of get is James Vick. That's it. And James Vick was doing pretty decent work at that point in time. Like, that is the hardest of hard rows to hoe to get to where you're going. And he finally did it. And yeah, I told you, I don't get emotional about MMA much these days, but yeah, there was something very, very rarely something about that. Yeah, it got to me. I'm not completely dead inside, contrary to popular belief. I don't know what's completely next for each guy. Topuria, we need to know the extent of the injuries. His nose got messed up. Both his eyes are messed up. He's probably got a broken orbital bone in there somewhere. At least one. Both his eyes were messed up. See if there's anything wrong with his ribs. Like we got to wait for like the report here to know how long he's going to be out. I saw a lot of people suggesting we can still now make Topuria and Paddy. I still think Topuria does bad things to Paddy Pimblett, but dude, Topuria lost big here. It's not just that he lost the fight. Not to further depress any Topuria fans here, but let's just take stock for half a second. Allegedly, Conor McGregor is coming back. I'll believe it when he gets in the cage, but he's signed apparently to fight Max. Topuria and McGregor is now off the table. Topuria and Makhachev is off the table. Hype for Topuria potentially moving up to welterweight is way off the table. He's going to have to do some pretty serious rebuilding. We'll have to wait and see exactly what he wants to do. To what extent there's injuries. We don't know. I don't know what's up with Gaethje. A lot of people were doing well, if Conor beats Max, does that mean we can get Conor Gagey? Look, Conor Gagey would be a fine fight. I have a really hard time believing that Conor McGregor is going to beat Max Holloway. I don't see it. As long as Conor's been out, his argument at this point, like they aired some of like the pre-recorded like interview session those two did remotely with like Joe Rogan and they just yelled at each other the whole time, inelegantly. Conor was like, "Yeah, this whole weight class is different. You've never been to welterweight. I'm gonna lean on you with all my steroid mass." I'm not even mad at Conor for taking steroids. The vast majority of those were related to helping heal his injury after he broke his leg in half. I'm sure he stayed on the gear longer than that because he got really, really big, largely for movies. And the vast majority of actors are on some kind of chemical enhancement. Hate to break that one to you, but they are. I'm not even mad at them either, by the way. I don't care. You're trying to achieve cosmetics for visual media. I don't care what you do to get there. Preferably don't do anything illegal, but that's kind of the extent of my opinion on it. So like that's all Conor's doing. He's like, yeah, I'm back. You're not gonna lay a glove on me. You don't know anything about this weight class. I was like, dude, Max is still out here fighting. Conor's been out for how long? And Conor's not beating Max. He's just not gonna beat him. Max is too good at this point. Like Conor assiduously avoided potentially fighting Max Holloway a second time after their first fight. He's doing it now because reasons, but what? You're going to do what Charles Oliveira did? Yeah, right. You ain't Conor McGregor, you are not Charles Oliveira. You're probably going to get got. Probably pretty badly. But in theory, the Conor sweepstakes are in play. We'll have to see. I don't know. There's a lot of wait and see going on here. Like Gagey said, he promised his mother he wouldn't make any clear-cut decisions about his future the night of this fight. There's a decent chance that wouldn't have held up if he'd been knocked out and he would have said, yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm not getting back to the title after this. It's a great venue. I gave it my all. I'm at peace. But he did win. So slight complication there as far as like what we might do, but we'll see. A lot of wait and see there in that. Also, so great fight, wild ride. As long as I've been watching Justin Gaethje, seeing him finally get there, I can't pretend that like that didn't get to me a little bit. So really, really strong way emotionally and narratively to end the event. As for the co-main event, again, I should have called this one and I didn't. I lacked the courage of my analytical convictions. Cyril Gane TKOs Alex Pereira 127 of the second round. Everything I said. Gane moves well. He fights well at range. Pereira's defense is... I don't want to say Pereira's defense is bad because I think that's a bit much. Pereira has defensive choices. Everyone does. Like, no one's defense is impermeable. You make choices. The way Pereira tends to fight has some very specific ways that you attack it. He actually did a slightly better job kind of starting to handle the jab in the second. So there's that. But he got jabbed up a little bit. Gane started timing him. Gane kept moving. Gane also pretty darn good at dealing with calf kicks. Landed a few decent inside leg kicks of his own. Just slowly kind of kept drawing Pereira around. Pereira kind of plotting. And Pereira, hands are here. We're moving forward. He does very small parrying. Not none. Just not the biggest part of his game. And he just kind of kept getting walked into stuff very, again, methodically. Gone just moving out of southpaw, bounce and move, jab, bounce and move, jab, inside leg kick, jab, side kick to the knee. 1-2. Oh, he's in range. Left hand starts coming. Pereira landed a pretty decent right hand near the end of the round. But something else about Cyril Gane, by the way, the dude's got a chin. We don't talk about it a whole lot for a number of reasons, but like that dude's hard to actually hurt with strikes. Not impossible, but hard to hurt. And he kind of finally very, very well timed Pereira coming in, real stiff jab, buckles Pereira. He goes, when he started going Donkey Kong a little bit, I kind of went, this is where Pereira might get him if the ref doesn't stop it. And dude, credit to Pereira's chin, by the way, because he got bombed on and fought his way back up, taking elbows to the head and several to the back of the head, mind you, because Cyril Gane just is a reckless fighter. We're all kind of a little bit more understanding of, oh, craziness is happening nearing a finishing sequence. The other guy's moving a lot. Again, we're a little bit more forgiving of that than we should be, in my opinion, but we are where we are. Pereira fights his way up, and he's still hurt, but he's vertical. And somewhere in my head was, this is the danger zone for Gane, believe it or not. Because if he goes caveman, stupid, if his technique falls apart, if his decision making falls apart here like it normally does when he's going for a finish, at range, when he is moving and 2-3 punches at a time, his technique and his mechanics, not always great, but they're solid for the most part. When he thinks you're hurt, that goes out the window and the standing hammer fists come out. He nearly got there against Pereira, and when he started getting that reckless, Pereira threw back at him and got him to back off. But that was that was all I said this last week. That was the danger for Gane. If he gets Pereira a little bit hurt and he gets overeager, Pereira is composed enough, savvy enough, experienced enough to wait, feel, throw back. And he did. Gane just didn't get as reckless as he has in the past. He stayed more or less composed and kept up the pressure, kept landing punches because Pereira doesn't do a lot of head movement. And eventually got the standing TKO. They could have stopped this a little bit earlier than they did, for the record. Gane is now a 2-time interim champion. And yeah, I should have picked him. I called exactly how he was going to be able to win this fight. I just didn't think he could pull it off consistently for 5 rounds. He didn't need to. Pulled it off as long as it was necessary to get the win. This should line him up for another fight with Tom Aspinall. Good. I hope I genuinely, I want Tom Aspinall back as much close to 100% as possible. I enjoyed what we got of their first fight before the eye poke. Gane was winning the fight until that point. Not huge, but winning it. But Aspinall had started figuring some stuff out. I wanted to see where that was going to lead. I'm still very, very interested in that fight. Might start favoring Gane this time, actually, believe it or not. It's certainly a thing to think about. So, this was the best Cyril Gane performance in a long time, maybe ever. He was uniquely suited to attack Pereira's game. And this was a pick'em according to the odds. I'm not the only one who saw this. A lot of people saw this. And I think there's a couple of there were a couple of reasons for why would you pick Pereira? One, if you're a big Pereira homer, the UFC's trying real hard to turn that guy into a real big deal. Calling him the biggest superstar on the roster, no. He's kind of what passes for it these days in some respects, but no. He was the MVP of 2024. He fought a bunch, several inadvisably short together to save cards. He did the UFC a bunch of solids, and somewhere was the internal logic of, he's fighting a lot and he's winning. He's a big deal. I respect Pereira's career. The man is incredible. But he's not like star power wise, big deal. Career achievement wise, he's not here, but I mean, there are people doing if he becomes the first 3-weight world champion, he's the greatest of all time in MMA. And no. That would be, to this point in time, a very, very singular achievement. That's not, singular achievements don't ascertain greatness. They can be a component, but they're not. The fact that winning weight class titles in 3 different divisions, especially like middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight, like the divisions with the biggest gaps between them, that certainly would be a singular achievement, but like it's not. There's other things more impressive in the MMA space than that. That's just not been done before, so we have a hard time quantifying it. Or qualifying it, if you prefer. And like I said, Gon was uniquely positioned to attack him. I don't know what Pereira's going to do next. He might stick around at heavyweight. There are definitely heavyweights he can beat. Let me be clear about that. Like, there's a lot of heavyweights on that roster that I think Pereira beats fairly handily. There's just a couple of guys that stylistically give him real problems, and I'm not sure at this point in time he's going to be able to make the necessary adaptations to really attack them. I could be wrong about that, for the record, but we'll see. We'll have to see what Pereira does. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for him to go back to 205. I think that's on the. It's not like he got so big that going back down is impossible. I think it would take a little bit of work, because, dude, he was heavier than Gon. He came in at 251. It would take a little bit of work to get to the point where cutting reliably to 205 is, a thing again. But definitely doable, I'm of the opinion. So we'll have to wait and see, again, a little bit what he wants to do. But Gon, it's all up to the recovery timetable for Tom Aspinall, what they want to do. But yeah, really good performance from Gon. Probably the most composed he's been in a while. Yeah. Gon is. I mentioned this last week. Like, somehow this guy turned into borderline the face of heavyweight championship fighting in the UFC for the last couple of years. He's been involved in now 2 interim title fights. He's had 3 other full world title opportunities. Kind of fumbled at the goal line against Francis Ngannou. Got embarrassed by John Jones. Fouled his way out of the Tom Aspinall fight. And this was and now another interim title fight. Like, the number of heavyweight title fights over the last, 3 years or so that have involved Ciryl Gane is disproportionately high. But the division is not very good. And while Ciryl Gane is not the best heavyweight in the world, I don't think, he's also he's got a skill set at heavyweight that is surprisingly difficult for most other heavyweights to attack. If Tom Aspinall is still going to be out for a while, I'm going to talk about Josh Hokett in a minute. I actually don't want Hokett and Gane. I want a 5-round rematch of Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov, because Volkov really should have got the decision in their first fight. And no, sorry, not their first fight, their second fight. Their first fight, Gane won pretty clearly. That second fight, the 3-round fight, I kind of thought Volkov won that. So I would kind of give me 5 rounds of those 2 again. It may not be the best fight in the world, but if Aspinall's out of the equation, I don't quite want Hokett in the title mix just yet for a number of reasons. Volkov has earned his shot. That's what I would like to see, for whatever that's worth. Moving on, Sean O'Malley, TKO's Ayman Zahabi, 402 of the second. I don't know what the heck Ayman Zahabi was doing. His footwork was very bad, like mechanically bad. Crossed his feet all the time, just moving around a lot. The only thing he really did was like run up inside low kicks, which, okay. O'Malley just kind of did O'Malley things. This was a setup fight. Like, Ayman Zahabi had earned a step up. Fair enough. He had a 7-fight winning streak. That is certainly nothing to sneeze at bantamweight. But he was never expected to win this fight. I don't know. I don't want O'Malley Yan 2 yet. Merab is still a factor. I'd rather Umar and Piotr Yan, personally. But the UFC is trying real hard to make Sean O'Malley a thing again. I don't know how much success they're going to wind up having with that, but they're going to try. So it would not shock me if he did get another fight with Yan, because he does have that really weird decision win over Piotr Yan that I don't think any sane person scored for Sean O'Malley. But, well, judging for you, don't know what else to say. Like, the problem is O'Malley just did exactly what was expected. And it's hard to build momentum off of doing the expected. Heavyweight, Josh Hokett, TKO Derek Lewis, 409 of the second. Derek Lewis should retire. Like, he's had injuries in the past. He's had back issues that have dogged him for a real long time. He's 41. It's time. He had nothing here. Like, Josh Hokett's gimmick, it works because people talk about it. I find it tedious and utterly uninteresting, but he's committed to it. But I mean, putting the gimmickry aside, Josh Hokett has a handful of things really going for him at heavyweight. He's light at heavyweight. He only weighs like 230. So he's in kind of the, Fedor, Kane, JDS build. He's a little bit smaller, not nearly as heavy, but quick. He's quick on his feet. He's got quick hands. I think I heard Jed Meshew say that this was going to be like Derek Lewis is going to be fighting at normal 1x speed, on a video player. Like, Derek Lewis is going to fight at 1x. Josh Hokett's going to be fighting at like 1.5x. And that's an insurmountable challenge. Turned out that's a fairly astute observation. Hokett was just faster everywhere. If Hokett's got a problem at heavyweight, I don't think he hits all that hard by heavyweight standards. It took a lot to put down Derek Lewis. And Derek Lewis got a decent chin anyway, but there's a few things that, like, again, putting aside how stupid I think his gimmick is, he's quick. He's pretty accurate. He's got a real good motor for heavyweight. I don't think he's quite Kane, but I didn't bring that comparison up lightly when I said if you watch Kane's early fights, a lot of what he's doing is just making the other guy work until they fall apart. Not everything he's doing is even all that effective. It's just draining. That's a lot of Hokett's game right now because he's still refining and building a lot of it. And once Kane got better, that stopped being the only way he could win, and he started really hurting people. Hokett's ground and pound is okay. He made a few interesting positional decisions. Oh, God, that armbar. Look, Josh Hokett could probably kill me with his bare hands. Okay? Let me start with everything I'm about to say with that preface. If he wanted to kill me, he probably could. But my word, that armbar was... How am I better at that than you? How am I better at that than you? I shouldn't be. I really shouldn't be. Like I said, you could kill me. I'm not trying to big myself up here. But he goes for an armbar, and everything about it almost is wrong. Oh my, it hurt me physically to watch that. Near the end of the first round, he's in full mount, he's landing punches and elbows, and Derek Lewis tries to do the, post and roll and get up thing he usually does, and the arm goes up, and Hogan spins for it. For the record, years ago, Derek Lewis was supposed to fight Fabricio over Verdum. This is why everyone was picking Verdum, because if Verdum gets half of that position, that arm is broken. Hogan spins for it, gets mostly to the armbar. The arm is, in fact, fully extended. But everything about the finishing mechanics is wrong. I mean, like, everything. For starters, he crosses his ankles. This is not the end of the world. You're not supposed to do that. You can. If you're going to cross your ankles, the leg that's by your opponent's head has to be on the bottom, because the other arm is going to be there pushing. And if that leg is on top, it's easy to displace it up this way, sit up, and get out of the armbar. It's got to be on bottom, so they can't just push with their free hand on that. You've got both legs there, and one of them's pushing down. So if you want to cross your ankles, not advisable. But the leg on their head is the one on bottom, not on top. His was on top. Second, when you sit back for the arm bar, you do not pull their arm to the center of your chest. That limits how far that is going to bend. If it means that arm is going straight. Sorry. If there's a flat surface under here like your chest, or up on here, and you can't extend this, this is not a bad deal. I can live with this. You don't pull it to your chest, you pull it to space. There's negative space on either side of your body. You tend to want to go on the outside, but it doesn't really matter that much. You don't pull it here, you pull it here, because you can bend it then further back. So instead of laying here like, I can live with this, this goes that way as much as possible. My elbows aren't super flexible, so I can't even do a demonstration of that. That's what you got to do. Third, you don't even have to pull the arm into negative space. Part of the problem with the arm going flat out like that is your knees aren't engaged. The way you want to do this is not actually bringing that arm to your chest. Now, this is a slightly different way to do it, but that arm gets to, you want it extended, you want the elbow locked, but instead of flat against your chest, if your chest is flat to the ground, you stop it about here, and you pinch your knees together here. It's about here, give or take. So you've still got the fulcrum point on the elbow. So this is isolated. You've got a grip on the wrist, and you don't pull this back. You arch your hips up. You bridge up, extending with the hips. That is a much better way to go about this, because you're not then trying to find a weird fulcrum point as you just kind of yank it back into space. Arch your hips, my man. Pinch, control, turn the thumb up, because that makes this a lot smaller and a lot less happy to bend, and bridge up. That's where you get a lot of that torque. That's where you get a lot of that displacement and torque. That's what you want to do. He's doing everything wrong almost. It's comical. A white belt should know. That's the day one armbar stuff. How are you? You're a professional fighter. Again, could kill me. Could absolutely beat me to death with his bare hands. This is not about me being anything other than, but man, everything about that pretty much was wrong. And that, okay, if you kind of struggle to know what you're doing, you grab an anaconda and you try to finish it like a darce, okay, maybe you if you're not super experienced or even like moderately experienced, okay, you confuse which one you're doing because you actually have to finish those differently. You're not quite great on like heel hook entries. Certain guillotine mechanics maybe you're a little bit iffy. Like there's plenty of stuff I'm willing to be like, okay, you're still learning. It's an armbar. It's an armbar. There's two things that like in 3 weeks of jujitsu, I don't even mean like you're actually a white belt yet. You're like, intro, no belt stuff, working towards your white belt. Minimum, you know how to finish an armbar, you know how to finish a rear naked choke. How do you do everything wrong? Like it's a minor miracle he wasn't trying to bend the arm the other way. That was painful. That was just painful to watch. Wasn't painful for Derek Lewis, I bet, though. Like he looked happy he looked perfectly content to ride out that round, but he was like, dude, Derek Lewis is like no motivation. He's bored. He gassed out. Second round, like he's just stumbling, throwing punches and missing, and Josh Hoka just, eventually punches him over and gets the finish. Josh Hoka is not a great heavyweight, but the heavyweight division kind of sucks. And Josh Hoka, despite his terrible gimmick, is not actually a bad fighter. Terrible armbar, but like he actually has an okay way that he approaches MMA at certain levels. And again, I can dunk on the armbar more. I'm not going to. That's a waste of everyone's time. But as a general proposition, like, is Josh Hoka a terrible fighter? No, not on balance. Is he a terrible jiu-jitsu practitioner? Unless this was performance art, yes. Because, good grief. That, again, that like arm bars are day one stuff for the most part. Like, the two submissions you should know. Like, you know the arm, you learn the arm bar, you learn the rear naked choke because everyone understands them. You don't have to explain, get into a lot of nuance about what's going on there. Like you're bending the elbow the wrong way. Okay. Oh, you're choking someone. Like everyone's seen a sleeper hold. Like some of this stuff is just like we know what's up intuitively, and refining it doesn't take nearly as long. Like getting proper Kimura attacks, getting proper guillotine grips and setups. Say nothing of like Ezekiel chokes, and there's other like more complicated stuff you can do in jiu-jitsu. But proper armbar mechanics, again, that's like your intro class teaches you here's how you do a mounted armbar. Like maybe the only attack they show you, and you'll that or maybe like one from the guard. And then you'll spend, forever never actually hitting it on someone because it's jujitsu and you are not good at it right away. Unless you're BJ Penn. And Josh Hogan and BJ Penn. But like for a heavyweight fighter, Josh Hogan has a chunk of things going for him, and the division's terrible. So there's that. Moving on, Mauricio Hufi killed Michael Chandler, 4:29 of the first round with wheel kick and punches against the fence. This was a waste of everyone's time. Michael Chandler sat out for like 3 years waiting for a Conor McGregor fight that we all knew was never going to materialize. Wasted whatever was left of his potential prime. I mean, I think his last win was what? The Tony Ferguson win, which was just who's more washed. Look, Chandler's another guy who's given a lot and has had some really, really good fights. And can't recommend enough. His 2 fights with Eddie Alvarez are great. He's had some good UFC fights. Not going to pretend he hasn't. But we're not going anywhere here. All you're going to do is get hurt more. You didn't actually offer almost anything to Hoofy. Be done, please. I don't need to see you take more damage. That doesn't serve any purpose. This didn't actually help Hoofy all that much either, because you beat up the old man. Hoofy was the biggest favorite on the card. This surprises no one. Bo Nickel TKO's Kyle Dawkins, 434 of the first. Another person who's sad that Ilya lost. Yeah, dude, if you're an Ilya fan, this was a tough night. It's not just that he lost, like it's kind of how he lost and how he performed going into that. Scroll back in the timeline here, and I talk a little bit more about it if you want details. But yeah, look, be sad. It's okay. Just you're gonna get up in the morning, or you're gonna go to work if it already is morning. The world keeps spinning. The people around you are what matter, not what a fighter does that you've never met and will never have any influence over. Like, don't let things that you can't control have outsized influence on you. There's a bunch of stuff you can't control that is going to have a very serious influence on you, because I can't control the price of gas. Boy, does that hurt. Right? There's a lot of stuff I can't control, and it still hurts, but like, how much am I going to get annoyed by it? How much am I going to let it affect my emotional state? And I have to deal with that one. Like, again, I have to fill up my gas. I have to fill up my car. I have to, any number of things. Some stuff that you have to do. This is a sporting contest, allegedly. Like, I get being invested. It's part of the fun. Don't be one of those people that breaks stuff over this. You can't control anything about this. You're not in his camp. You're not him. You're not in his opponent's camp. You're not advising him on matchmaking. You do nothing to influence the outcome of this anyway, one way or the other, at all. That is the level of reaction you should allow. Is I could do nothing about this, and this doesn't matter. Okay, I'm a little sad because I like Ilya Topuria. That's fair. Leave it at that. When you wake up, move on. Like, it's okay to be a little bit sad. It's okay to be a little bit depressed. Like, grieve to the extent that that's the appropriate response. Get to acceptance. That happened. It's unfortunate. Move on. There are things in your life that matter. Sporting outcomes aren't one of them, as a general rule. Bo Nickel beats Kyle Dawkins. Decent performance from Nickel. It's a nice takedown. Okay, ground and pounds. It's few and far between, but a lot of that was like Dawkins just holding his head. So a little bit of that. There was a stand-up. I was okay with it. I know the commentary team was like, I don't love that. He just hit him. Like, yeah, he hit him, but he's been stuck in full guard for like 3 minutes at this point. And he's not hitting him hard enough to like end the fight. So I could live with it personally, but I understand if you disagreed with it. And then he just cracks him with the old 3-2. Excuse me, 2-3. It was power hand, lead hand hook. And punches him out. Bo Nickel's improvement, and especially like the way he rebounded from the loss to Rainier de Ritter, has been somewhat heartening. So we don't need to rush Bo Nickel. I don't need to see him kill scrubs, but Kyle Dawkins isn't a scrub. This is the level of guy you should probably fight again, a little bit better than Kyle Dawkins, but someone about this level. I don't need him rushed to fighting ranked opposition right now. That seems a bit premature. Let him keep developing a little bit, but we move him up a little bit in competition, but we don't need a big jump. And kicking everything off, Diego Lopez defeated Steve Garcia via knockout punches, 242 of the second. Good first round from Garcia. His jab did work. He moved well. He avoided getting stuck into bad exchanges with Lopez. And in the second round, Diego Lopez kind of started walking through a few of those punches, and Garcia decided to get happy feet trading in the pocket. Movement in the pocket, especially with your feet, needs to be purposeful. If you're kind of just doing it out of nerves or habit, you're going to put yourself in bad position, especially against Dude, Diego Lopez at range is not that great. Diego Lopez trying to track you down is not great. He can't stop you from circling. But if you fight him in the pocket, he's okay there. And Garcia got clipped. Lopez followed up. Tough loss for Garcia. He had a good winning streak going into this, but the UFC liked Diego Lopez. Dude, you lost badly to Volkanovski the first time because he just circled to his right. And you had no counterplay to the strategic brilliance of circling that way. So you get to the rematch, you do worse. And this time, Volk starts circling this way, and you go, aha, I can cut you off. And Volk goes, oh, what if I circle the other way? Tactical genius. I love Volk. But suddenly, once again, Diego Lopez is helpless at the notion of Alexander Volkanovski circling to his left instead of to his right. He went the other way. He listed lazily to the left the whole fight, and I could do nothing. What about this fight makes you think another fight with Lopez and Volk goes any differently? Not a darn thing. Again, the UFC like Diego Lopez. He's action oriented. Bless him. He is happy to kind of do them solids on short notice, so of course they like him. But dude, you got jabbed up and outmaneuvered by Steve Garcia, who then accommodated you and you kind of rescued yourself. Volk would do the same thing to you again. You did worse in the second fight. You actually won at least one round in that first fight with Volk. You got 50-45 across the board in the rematch. Unequivocally, uncontroversially, blanked. Because the first time Volk went this way and he couldn't deal, the next time he went this way and you really couldn't deal. If you fight him again, he's going to go this way, and you're going to go, aha, I can cut him off. And he's going to go this way, and you're going to go, aha, I kind of know how to deal with this. And then he's going to go back and forth, and your head's going to explode because you just can't cage cut to save your life. And that's a foundational skill you're lacking. So I just don't care. But that was it. Only 7 fights. Good grief, I've been going for a while on this one. I mentioned already, fight of the night was Gaethje and Topuria. Performances went to Justin Gaethje and Cyril Gane. They were all finishes, so you could have chosen a lot. I'm fine with the top 2. I'm fine with Gaethje and Gane getting performances. Yeah, I would not have given them to the other win, even though like they're good finishes. I wouldn't have gone the other way on any of those. This is technically the only UFC event with all of its fights ending via knockout or TKO in some variety. Okay. Also ties a couple of other fights for having a couple of other events for having all fights end via finish. Those events, though, had 11 and 10 fights. This only had 7, as we previously discussed. So, all the bonuses were amped up, but again, they were paid in cryptocurrency. Sell that immediately, by the way. Get real money from that. Like Bitcoin don't take financial advice from me. This is my observation. Bitcoin is semi-stable. It fluctuates, but like it's not. I have a hard time seeing the bottom actually dropping out of that. Too many people are into it at this point. But short of that, cryptocurrency is basically just an unregulated securities market. And 90% of what goes on there, it would be illegal under a regulated system. Here's the thing. Like, everybody there just gets rug pulled. That's it. Like that's 90% of what's going on is fleecing people with rug pulls. So again, don't actually take financial advice from me. Take it from people who know a lot more about what they're talking about. But my general understanding is that for the most part, crypto is a dubious proposition, depending on what specifically you're dealing with. So I don't know. But yeah, that's what they were paid in, because cheap. Super cheap. All right. Any questions, comments about the event? I had a couple of things actually. On the production side, I got to talk about this. They brought out Tyson Fury to make an announcement that Tyson Fury declined to make. He's going to sign with Zuffa. And they're going to try and make him and Anthony Joshua. That's kind of been the fight to make. But Tyson Fury getting a whole ass walkout and then saying a lot of nothing was certainly a choice. The walkouts themselves, they tended to come from different points. Most people, Topuria, I think, came out of the Oval Office. Gaethje came out of, I don't think it was the Oval Office that he came out of. All of the fighters were escorted to the ring by two people. I mean, the corner was behind them, but there were two other people with them. One of them was a first responder of some variety, so firefighter, EMT, police officer. The other was a serviceman or woman. I think they were all men in this case, but a serviceman or woman. I have to double check if there were any women there, who were Medal of Honor recipients, which is cool in some respects. But it led to confusion because people are stupid about this, where when the fighters walked by, because they had military personnel stationed all the way all around the place, and they were saluting when these people were walking by, and there's a bunch of people going, "Why are they saluting the fighters? You people, you make my head hurt." You may not know this because it's the kind of thing that you actually have to, have encountered once or twice in your life to have knowledge of, but the soldiers are not saluting the fighters. If you see a Medal of Honor recipient, you salute. If you are a 4-star general and you see a private first class that is a Medal of Honor recipient wearing the Medal of Honor, you salute. That is a deeply held tradition in the armed services. It does not matter what rank you are relative to them. If they have a Medal of Honor, and I think especially if they're wearing it, you salute that because of what you have to do to earn that. So everyone who's saluting is not saluting the fighter. They're saluting the Medal of Honor recipient. It looks like they're saluting the fighter. Like this was not done on accident. It was done to get a specific visual cue. But if you want to know why that's happening, it's not them saluting the fighters. They are expressing their deep respect, admiration, and appreciation for fellow servicemen and women who went above and beyond the call of duty and displayed uncommon valor. Like, the Medal of Honor is the highest military honor the United States gives out. Again, it doesn't matter what rank you are. You see a Medal of Honor recipient, you damn well salute. That's what they were doing. And if you know military culture and tradition and history, you know that. But most of the people bitching about this stuff don't. So you just look like an idiot. But people look like idiots on the internet all the time. Why should this be any different? And again, let's also be very clear that those choices were made, one, as a cool thing to do for Medal of Honor recipients. Two, to get it to look like they're saluting the fighters. Like, I'm not ignorant to the intended effect here. I can just tell you they found a very legitimate reason for it to happen. And that means, again, it just means a lot of people complaining about a lot of this event, and there's plenty of things to complain about, look even dumber than some of their other complaints are. Like, there are valid complaints about this. Be very, very clear. This isn't one of them. If you wanted to lodge a complaint, you should complain that the UFC exploited this. That's your complaint. Not, oh, they're saluting fighters. They're not. They're saluting servicemen and women who earned the highest honor that this country bestows. Please be serious. So that so the walkouts, okay. There were some pretty cool visuals. They did a Delta, was it Super Delta formation flyover, which is always, those are always fun. They had those at the beginning. They sang the national anthem. Normally, I'm not a big fan of that at sporting events. I'm just going to be honest. Well, depends on the context of the event. Explicitly national competition, like the World Cup always plays the anthems of the national teams before they play. I can live with that because this is expressly nationalistic. I don't like when they do it for boxing. I don't like that before every like title fight, we get the anthems for both of the countries. And depending on where you are in the world, you also get the host nation's anthem. I don't like it. Not a big fan of that. So them singing them singing the Star Spangled Banner. I know why they did it, because they're trying to sell a chunk of this as this is an integral part of the celebration of 250 years of the United States of America. If that's going to be your sales pitch, then sure. The national anthem makes sense. The problem is I don't buy your pitch. You had a unique venue. You did this on Flag Day, which is also Donald Trump's birthday. You did this like for the sitting president, not for the country. That bothers me a little bit. Also, if you wanted this to be like a big, like this is kind of what we're giving back as part of the celebration, you should have put this on CBS instead of behind the paywall of Paramount Plus. If this is about giving back and contributing to the celebration of the country, this should have been put on the platform that the vast majority of the country can access. That is free, over the air television. You didn't do that. You stuck it behind your stupid paywall. This should have been at least simulcast across those two things. You didn't, because this isn't actually about celebrating the country. It's about you trying to, you know, play into Trump's, personality a little bit. You're trying to attach yourself to you're trying to attract the new crop of fans, because we're about at the point when a giant chunk of the COVID fan base is churning out of the sport. And you think this is a good way to go about it. And being, politically allied with the administration has all kinds of other benefits, some of which are of dubious legality. May sound like I'm purely anti-UFC here. I am not. That is just a statement of fact. So, yeah, there's that. So I just that I didn't buy. They had the president's Marine. There's a band that is like ostensibly the president's, not Trump's personally, but whoever the sitting president is. It's it's the Marine Corps band, the president's Marine Corps band. They provided live walkout music for all the fighters, and they did the fanfare for some of the other stuff, and they did the music that is the transition while they play the tail of the tape. They did a combination of the Pirates of the Caribbean theme for that and crap. I had it in my head because they would dovetail from part of the Pirates theme into part of this other movie's theme, and I can't remember what it was for the life of me. Forgive me. But they did those men and women, like the people responsible for that, the live music there, chef's kiss, out of the park, giant home run. Thank you. Y'all are professionals, clearly. You did a great job. You were an asset to the overall presentation. That was awesome. Big ups to them. That was great. The UFC will never do anything that cool again. but they should. This is also a nice way to get around a lot of if you watch old UFC fights on any of their official archives, Fight Pass, Paramount Plus, whatever. A lot of older stuff has the walkout music dubbed over because they don't pay royalties for those. They don't even pay rights fees for them to begin with. They kind of just have a handful of things they don't want to use for any number of reasons. Fighters say, I want to walk out to this. They play it for the house, and then when they do rebroadcasts or anything, they just dub over it. And frequently, it's stupid. Uriah Faber walking out to something other than California Love, much as I don't like Uriah Faber, is just awkward. It's doubly awkward when, like, oh, you're doing something to the song and we're not playing the song you originally walked out to, so it doesn't sound the same. Like things aren't lining up. Live performances, live covers of stuff like that gets around that pretty handily. But yeah, that was tremendous. Genuinely loved that. So again, that part of the production was a big home run. They did they had some pyro for the top two fights. It was weak pyro, but the UFC tends to eschew anything that looks cooler as pageantry. So it was something. They had a really big fireworks display at the very end because, of course, they did. But yeah, that was so the dignitaries could be in the cage looking at it rather than, anything cool the fighters did. And that I'm not a big fan of. So wasn't the biggest fan of some of that. They oh god, the pacing for the first bit of this was dreadful. There's 7 fights on this card. Your event still took like, how long did this go? Your event was still like 5 hours long, which is unacceptable. Like there was just so much downtime throughout the first like 4 fights in particular. Just so much. There's also a ton of commercials featuring Dana White. Please no. He's not good at that. That was not good. That was off-putting. Let's be perfectly frank. A few of they did some segments between fights that were supposed to be like retelling parts of American history. Some of them I didn't hate. I know other people disliked this one, but I actually kind of liked the one where they did like sound bites from most of the presidents we have sound clips for. So it started with like FDR because he was like radio broadcast. So we had like some from FDR, we had some from Truman, Eisenhower, JFK. I think they skipped Nixon and LBJ. I think they skipped Carter and Ford too. They might have included brief ones from those two. They skipped George H.W. Bush, but they did use Reagan. Like Reagan skipped H.W. Bush. They had a Clinton bit on there, which was a choice. They had one of the famous like W's. I think they used the famous one of him like at the cleanup from the Twin Towers post 9/11. They had an Obama clip. They didn't have a Biden clip, which is fine. They probably couldn't find anything where he was largely coherent. And then they closed with Trump, with a Trump soundbite. Of course they did. I mean, he's the sitting president. If you're just doing it chronologically, okay, I get it. But yeah. So I personally didn't hate that. I understand the objection that like we shouldn't be celebrating presidents because America is bigger than the presidency. True. At the same time, let's not pretend that like giant chunks of our history aren't inexorably like intertwined with some of those people and their decision making. So I didn't hate that one. Not my favorite thing in the world, but like I could kind of jive with that. Some of the others were just lazy. Like almost all of these were just the laziest AI video generated prompts stuff. Like I'm just lazy. You put significantly more effort into what you did for the sphere card visually. Like the individual like celebrations of different parts of Mexican heritage and culture that you throughout their history that you put up in at the Sphere show were significantly higher quality and much better done than anything you did here. And that bothers me a little bit because not that you shouldn't celebrate Mexican culture. It's great. It's rich. The notion that American culture is non-existent is largely crap. I don't love everything about American culture. I don't love anything about any culture because culture is inherently fallible. But pretending that American culture isn't rich and deep and like there's plenty of stuff you could have drawn on to celebrate. And you just prompted like, hey, the Lewis and Clark expedition walking through the Mississippi. Like, guys, have you seen the Mississippi? It's enormous. They didn't walk through it. Oy vey. So I'm actually not opposed to like generative technologies being part of a workflow. You should just use it to make easier things that are tedious. If it's all you use, all you are is lazy. Using it as part of a workflow, I think is fine. I'm not here to try and litigate this with anyone. This is just my opinion on the matter. I think it can be used. I think while there are concerns to be had about it, a lot of the concerns were wildly overblown by inaccurate data that was published, especially like the water consumption thing, like the number of people like, oh no, it uses so much water. It's a closed system. The author of the book that miscalculated water usage for data centers had to print a correction that no one read because no one reads corrections. So everyone just thinks the first thing they read about this is correct. It's not. There's problems to be had with these things. What are they doing about with all the rare earth elements? What does this do for the market for personal computers and like compiling and computing power that you as an individual could own? Those are real concerns. Like the water usage. All the data centers in the United States right now don't even use like 4% of the water the golf courses in this country use. Be serious. You want to live next to a data center? Fine, I don't. But make the real arguments. Don't make up BS. There's plenty of legitimate criticisms to be leveled. When you make stuff up, no one can take you seriously. So watch it about stuff like that, please. Anywho. So not the biggest fan of the way they have gone about incorporating generative imagery technology and whatnot at the UFC level, because if they used it as part of a workflow for their very, very talented staff that they could hire, because they have plenty of money, I would not be complaining. I mean that, like, oh, if anyone had come out and gone, they used AI stuff as part of this, and like, as part of is not a problem for me. Like, not at all. If that's all you've got, you're lazy and cheap. And the UFC has no reason to be cheap and lazy. They have the money, they have the talent, they're just lazy and cheap for no good reason other than kicking more money up to the C-suite. And that is profoundly off-putting. Ugh. Not gonna go into that whole thing beyond that. So didn't love that. I don't want to try and run down everything about this card because there was a bunch of stuff that happened around it. I mean, like an hour before the card happened, there was a thing about like allegedly Eric Trump asking Daniel Cormier if any of the fights tonight are going to be fixed. Now, two things. One, I actually appreciate that if you want to know about fixed fights, you go to Daniel Cormier because Cormier will blab. If you're trying to fix a fight in the UFC, that dude could not keep a secret to save his life. Don't tell him. But I find it really difficult to believe that this would just be like a Twitter or Instagram or whatever DM exchange. Like, if you want to get information out of Cormier, you can't do it over text. You have to do it in person. Then you just let him talk, and he'll eventually just say things because he's pathologically allergic to silence. Just gotta keep going. But there's some disputation around that, and the line has been like, no, those were fake. Cormier tweeted about that happening. So either he got hacked and immediately got his account back, odd, unlikely. He was somehow fooled by AI generated images, which is not what he said. He didn't say, like, I did. The whole thing is just bizarre and stupid. And for the record, I have no problem believing that this was just random stupidity or that someone in the Trump family asked the wrong guy about fight fixing, which is, just a felony. Not asking about it, but actually fixing fights. Big felony. Yeah, that's where we are. Golly. Anything else production wise? We did have a delayed start. It wasn't actually rain. It was like high winds they were worried about. So once those died down, it was clear that we were not going to get rained on. Things went ahead. So ultimately, this was probably the closest the UFC will ever come to replicating how cool Pride events looked. Because if you've never seen how awesome, like, the intros and whatnot, and the pomp and the circumstance and the pageantry and the understanding presentation that Pride Fighting Championships had, go look it up. And you will weep for the UFC's painful, generic, lazy, boring, stripped down, uninteresting presentation. Because they just do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, no matter where they are. All the music they play on the house show is from Dana White's CD that he burned in high school, because that's about when the musical taste topped out for the stuff they play over the house show. And everything looks the same. Like, you can watch any fight, and with very, very few exceptions, you will have no idea where you are or what event it is. Everything just looks bland and the same. So, yeah. And here, it didn't. And I know some people take issue with that. And to be very clear, there are issues to be taken. And part of the problem is, like, a bunch of people complained about the wrong stuff. Wasn't a fan of the press conference being in front of the Lincoln Memorial, mostly because UFC press conferences are terrible. The ceremonial weigh-ins, however, I thought were actually really cool. I think they did those at the Ellipse. That was actually pretty cool. So credit to that one. That of the events I thought was pretty cool. But they had, like, a big thing where, like, the Nitro Circus people were there, and every moron on God's green earth said idiocracy is prophetic, and I can't with you people. If you want to hear like my response to anyone who talks about how prophetic idiocracy is, I just point them to Mark at this point. My good friend Mark Radulich over on his TikTok has a whole thing about what's actually going on with idiocracy and how stupid it is. Because it's ahistorical nonsense based around a comforting lie about the nature of history, the nature of humanity, and the nature of intelligence. But again, go listen to Mark's thing on that. He does a pretty good job of summarizing my thoughts on it, and I don't disagree. To anyone, the other argument that winds up happening here, I'll be as brief about this as I can because this is just about the setting. There's a number of people who've taken the stance, I just don't want sporting events on the lawn of the White House. I find that to be an understandable position. I can tell you why this didn't bother me. That's all I can do here. The notion that the White House is hallowed, sacred, whatever, has been dead to me since I was in middle school. You may be asking yourself, Robert, what happened when you were in middle school that's so jaded you? Bill Clinton's second term. That's what happened when I was in middle school. That dude had a whole scandal about his sexual indiscretions in the White House. Next year, history taught me about JFK and his various sexual indiscretions in the White House. And then you can look back throughout history. A lot of stuff has happened there. A lot. I can tell you my personal, so I can look back on all that and decide, like, how do I want to treat this going forward? Because at a certain point, that's all you can do is like, do we want to try and change this? Should we start treating this more seriously and like it matters? And then the point at which I gave up trying to have this discussion. See, I tried to have, my point of view, I had this discussion and with people, I think it was Obama, when he lit up the White House in rainbow colors for Pride Month. I did not care for that for a number of reasons. I don't have a problem with gay people. It's largely to do with, like, what are you doing with the White House? Allegedly, this is our house, not his, right? That bothered me. I talked with people about it. We had discussions about this. They were moderate. I shouldn't say completely unfruitful, but the first time it devolved into a real argument, and I walked away from that one because it became unhelpful. The next person I talked to about it, I approached with like wanting to understand their perspective, not just yell. So I learned about their perspective. I shared my perspective. We agreed to disagree, and that was that. And that's fine. I'm okay with this. Like, I can agree to disagree with you. That one, like, actually had some discussion. Trump's first term in the White House, I don't think he did anything. He didn't do anything like that I like got pissy about. He might have. I'd have to double check because his first term for me is kind of a blur for a lot of reasons. Then Biden, and this is when I gave up. Between him lighting himself against a red backdrop like the Emperor in Star Wars and then having a bunch of topless trans people on the south lawn of the White House, I have given up pretending this place matters. Now, to be clear, the transsexual part of that is largely immaterial. If Donald Trump had a bunch of topless cis women on the White House lawn, I would not be happy with that either. But that was the point at which I decided no one treats this seriously. No one wants to treat this seriously. This is not worth treating seriously or fighting over. Moved on. That's when I gave up on this discussion. I had no prior to that, whether because I think I did talk with people like Trump did some. I forget the specific. Like I said, Trump's first term I've largely blocked out giant chunks of that for unrelated reasons to Trump and everything else to do with other stuff going on in my life. But I remember talking with people about some of the stuff he was doing and understanding their objections, whether I cared all that much or not. I was largely like walked away agreeing to disagree, understanding a little bit more about the perspectives of other people. That's the extent that we got fruitful conversation out of that. And some of the objections were reasonable, some of them were unreasonable. That's the nature of this thing. And just some of the stuff that went on during Biden, Like I didn't even want to talk with people about it because what's there to talk about? This is where we are. And this is the seriousness with which we're treating this supposedly important space. It hasn't been important pretty much in my lifetime. You could argue exactly how long that is if you want to dig back into history. So this event happening, like you can object to it being attached to the current administration. That's valid. That's valid. That is extremely valid. There's plenty of reasons for that. There's plenty of things going on with the UFC and with the Trump administration that are like ugly and colluded and corrupted, like corruption based. That's real. It's a very real thing. Fine. That's a valid complaint. Go ahead, make those complaints. I will agree with you the vast majority of the time. If you want to sit there with a straight face and tell me this violates the sanctity of the White House, I do not believe you or take you seriously. This has not been an important thing pretty much in my lifetime. Early in my life, people would have pretended, attempted to maintain the facade. Yeah, sure, maybe Clinton. This is like early in my life is pre-Clinton's second administration, second term in office, right? So like very early in my life, when you get like HW, you get first Clinton, people might have tried to maintain the facade. Like, sure, we all know stuff that happened in the past, but look, it's kind of been on the up and up since what? Ford? He didn't do anything too crazy, right? So Ford and Carter and Reagan, and we're trying to like restore some respectability here, and yeah, that's a load of crap for the most part. Like, I don't hold that space as sacred or hallowed. It's not. To whatever extent it might be, it has been messed with, defiled, overused, like whatever you want to say about it, like for a really long time by both sides of the political spectrum. I don't have the energy to try and argue with anyone about this. It's so pointless. If you do want to try and argue that like you don't like this being on public land without public say taking place, like the sitting administration just doing the stuff kind of unilaterally, I think you could make an argument that there need to be guidelines. That's an argument I think you could make, for the record. I don't know. Look, if they leave that thing up, yeah, we got a problem. Because why? Why? There's no reason to leave that thing up. It served its purpose. Take it down. But again, like if you want to say that there should be some kind of guidelines around this stuff to not just let the sitting administration, whoever it happens to be, do whatever they want, basically. I do think there's a case to be made that we need some like actually stronger guidelines around this kind of thing. That's fair. That's actually very fair. But those don't exist at the moment, and to the best of all available knowledge, everything that was done here was done within the bounds of accepted legality and propriety. Well, propriety might be stretching it, but certainly accepted legality. There was a lawsuit to try and stop this. It got slapped down because they would have to have proved like damage to the lawn space that is not actually like they couldn't actually prove, which is functionally like the only action that they had. So again, you could argue that we need stronger guidelines around this, and I don't think you're not whistling Dixie with that one. That's viable. That's fair. But you play the hand you're dealt, and this is where we are. So I am not up in arms over this happening on the White House lawn. Some people are. Largely, whether or not you are okay with this or not breaks down along political lines. I'm not party affiliated. I told you I'm just tired. Like I tried to for a while. I tried with this, and I've given up. I've pretty much genuinely given up. Like the argument about certain spaces in certainly the White House carrying like intrinsic hallowed material. Now, the Lincoln Memorial, like that, should probably be held a little bit in a little bit more respect. Part of the like there are places in DC that are meant to be like places of solemn contemplation and reflection. The Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, the Vietnam War Memorial, like any of the war memorials, actually, like those are not places for frivolity and levity. So to the extent that any of this interfered with that, yeah, I agree with that. I don't know why this or any administration in my lifetime and their treatment of the White House would get anything approximating the sort of reverential treatment that we should give, war memorials to the South Lawn of the White House. Like no administration in my lifetime has treated that like it's some kind of sacred ground. It's not, it's just ground. And I've given up arguing with people. That's my position. I know people that screamed and hollered about what Biden did. Again, that bothered me personally. I know people that are personally bothered by this, and I understand them. I am not trying to convince them of the rightness of my position. I just have given up trying to argue what constitutes norms in this space, what should constitute norms in this space, given the long history of all the stuff that's gone on in the White House. That's not a fight worth having to my mind. But that's a hill other people might die on. So I'll leave it to them to decide where they will die rhetorically or literally, as the case may be. So I think that's going to be it for the Freedom 250 stuff. Good grief, I've gone on for way too long. I will try to be quick with the next part of this. So my full report is in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give it a read if you're so inclined. I always appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Now let's try to speed through this UFC. Forgot that. Fight Night 279 preview. Gotta scroll up and click over. All right, let's see what we can do here. I'm gonna try and speed run this one, guys. So, main event is good. Like the main event. Rematch between Manel Kape and Kyoji Horiguchi. These two have fought before. Let's see. I believe Horiguchi won. We should double check. He arm triangle choked Manel Kape in 2017. Did they fight again? Not until now. So we've been out there. They're a little bit off from the rematch. Horiguchi came back to the UFC and has done pretty good work. Beat Tagir Ulanbekov, beat Amir Albazi. Looked pretty good in both of those fights. Kape has shown pretty good form lately. 3-fight winning streak. In fact, he's on a really good recent run. He's 7-1 in his last 8. That one loss coming to Muhammad Makayev. Last 2 fights, he stopped he stopped Oscar Mabayev, and then he knocked out Brandon Royval. That stopped Brandon Royval in the first round. That was a good win. It was a real good win for Kape. Winner is probably next in line for a title fight, depending on Pantoja's return timetable. but should definitely be serious consideration, if nothing else. Let's have a quick look at the odds. My hunch is to lean Horiguchi. Oh, the odds like Kape. Interesting. Kape has shown good form. Over 3 rounds? Would that change my opinion? I might like Kape over 3, but 5 I think might be enough to tip me towards Horiguchi. It's close. Kape's like minus 150, give or take. I gotta reset my spreadsheet. One sec. Not you. You. All right. It is late, so I'm going to basically be asterisking everything I do here tonight. I've been going for almost 2.5 hours, and I only have so much like memory of a bunch of these guys. So we're gonna go pretty quick and I reserve the right to change my mind on a lot of these. Let me just put it that way. I am gonna lean Horiguchi in the main event, though. Kape has looked pretty darn good lately, so there's that. I don't know. I think Horiguchi is a tough matchup for him. I think they're both quick. Kape's a little bit more powerful, but Horiguchi is, certainly no slouch at flyweight from the power department. I think Horiguchi's a little more well-rounded, so I'm gonna go with Horiguchi. But again, all these are basically getting it's 3:30 in the morning where I am, and I've been up for quite a while, so hopefully you'll all just bear with me on this one. But that's a good fight for what it's worth. That's actually a very good fight. Co-main event: Iwan Cutelaba and Navajo Sterling. It's a bit of a step up for Sterling, but he's the one who should win this. Cutelaba has actually kind of leveled out his game. And I mean that as a compliment. Like he's smoothed things out. Sterling is still kind of the one they're looking to push. Cutelaba will be a good test. I think it's a test that Sterling will pass, though. Odds, odds like Sterling about minus 300. Yeah, that tracks. Probably the second best fight on the card, actually, at featherweight. Andre Fili and Lockdog Vinicius Oliveira. Oliveira had a real tough fight his last time out, decided that the continued cuts to bantamweight were a bad idea, is moving up to featherweight. Andre Fili is a tough welcome at featherweight. He's been around forever. Has been just kind of a very steady, trade wins and losses guy forever. I mean, he's been with the UFC since 2013. Like, Fili's been here for a while. He's coming off a loss to Jose Miguel Delgado. Had a split decision win over Christian Rodriguez before that. Lost to Melky Costa before that. So again, he's kind of just the trade wins and losses mode, which might indicate he's going to upset Lockdog. I have to double check the odds in a minute. Yeah, Oliveira coming off of that loss to Mario Bautista. He really struggled in that fight. I mean, he gassed hard after the first round. Bad weight cut. Bautista's good anyway. A lot of stuff going on there. So he's moving up to featherweight, like I said. When was the last time he was at featherweight? Has he never been at featherweight? Early in his career, he had a few flyweight fights. Good grief. That man's huge. How do you ever? He's way too big to make flyweight. That's crazy. Like a scarecrow out there. Feely is not a soft touch for your divisional debut. I tend to like Oliveira a little bit more, and again, Feely's a little long in the tooth. Yeah, give me Lockdog. I'll go with Oliveira there, but that's tough. That's not an easy fight for his debut. Featherweight, Hader Emil and Christian Rodriguez. This will probably be fun. Hader Emil tends to have entertaining fights, if nothing else. Rodriguez leans on his wrestling. Emil's pretty good counter wrestling, does a lot of offensive work. Odds like Rodriguez. All right, you know what? Let me go with. I'm going to respect the odds there while I think about that one. Again, I'm kind of just asterisking all of these, so bear with me on this. Flyweight, Andre Lima and Kevin Borjas. Okay. Odds are heavily with Lima. Let me double check Borjas here. Not you, not you, not you, not you. Come on. There you are. So many events in the upcoming week. Okay, Lima, Borjas. Borjas is 10-5. Peruvian. 1-4 in the UFC. Yeah, that's not good. Some of those losses are more understandable. Lost to Joshua Van, Alessandro Costa. Both those guys are pretty good. Most recently, Simu Darji and Emmanuel Rodriguez. Not as good. Lima undefeated, 11-0. Yeah, Lima. Lima tracks. Okay. Melsik Bogdasarian and Murtazali Magomedov. I'm mispronouncing that, guys. No, I may not be. Murtazali Magomedov, till I hear otherwise. Bogdasarian has done the thing where he kind of hits the wall. In the UFC, you came in pretty hot, then kind of got figured out. Coming off a loss to John Silva, February of last year, so he's been out for a minute. I mean, that loss to Silva was itself coming off of a little over a 2-year layoff. He had 3 fights fall through during that time. He had a fight with Joe Anderson Brito canceled in December of last year. Now he's finally back. Oh, Magomedov. This is his UFC debut, 10-0. Contender Series win. Bogdasarian's an interesting choice to be your debut if you're someone they might be trying to push. Odds like Magomedov. I just can't shake the fact that, Bogdasarian's one of those guys who, like, once he gets figured out, is just figured out. Unless he's left Glendale. Because that team is ill-equipped for helping you adjust your game in any way, shape, form, or fashion. On the prelims, what do we got here? Bia Mesquita and Melissa Mullins. That is an easy pick for Bia Mesquita. She should be moving up in the rankings and towards the title picture very, very rapidly because women's bantamweight needs all the help it can get. And she's actually adapted her jiu-jitsu game quite well for MMA. Flyweight, Alan Nascimento and Mitch Raposo. I think Raposo is one of those guys who has a very poor UFC record. 10-3. Yeah, it's one. Okay, not very poor, but 1-2 in the UFC. Lost Andre Lima, lost to Sumo Darji, both split decisions. Coming off a win over Azat Maxim. Whereas Nascimento, if he can make weight, he's one of those flyweights who struggles if memory serves. 22-6. I may be confusing with somebody else, though. I'll know in a sec. missed weight once. Okay. Lost his UFC debut to Tiger Ulanbekov. Won a fight. Bunch of fights canceled. Missed weight. Beat Jafel Filio. Beat Cody Durden. Okay. Feel like this is Nascimento. Odds are close. Yeah. I like Nascimento a little bit more. Okay, next featherweight, Michael Aswell and Gaston Bolaños. Bolaños has struggled in the UFC a little bit, 8-5. 2-2 in the UFC. How'd he do? He beat Aaron Phillips. He lost to Marcus McGee. Marcus McGee's good. He beat Cortavius Romeus. He lost to Kwong Lee. Kwong Lee is not very good. He's had 2 fights fall through since then, one with Ju Song Yu, the other with Jung Young Lee. Okay. As well, 11-4. Come on, wake up. There you go. 1-2 in the UFC. Lost to Pelagi Oki, beat Lucas Almeida, lost to Luke Riley. The Oki fight, that's a tough debut. The Riley loss isn't too bad. Riley's turned out to be pretty good. Let's see. The odds are with Aswell. Yeah, there's not a lot of faith around Bolaños at the moment. I will be double checking that one a little bit. Those odds are pretty wide, and I'm not sure I agree with that. Women's bantamweight, Carol Hossa and Luana Santos. Hossa, 19-7. Coming off a win over Nora Conola. She lost to Eileen Perez before that. She's kind of been up and down in the UFC. She did okay for a while. Came in, had a bunch of fights fall through, a bunch of Julia Avila fall through in particular. Jeez. First loss was to Sarah McMahon in 2022. Then she beat Ling Landsberg, lost to Norma Dumont, beat Yana Santos, lost to Erdene Aldana, beat Penny Quinza, lost to Eileen Perez, beat Nora Carnole. So she's pretty firmly in up, down territory. Luana Santos, by contrast, 10-2. 5-1 in the UFC. Only lost to Casey O'Neill. 2-fight winning streak, wins over Tainara Lisboa and Melissa Croden. That's respectable. Both fairly close to each other in the rankings. Women's bantamweight is just in such dire need of help. Odds are slightly with Hossa. I think I'm going to go with Santos. I haven't picked a dog yet. I'm not a big believer in Carol Hossa at the moment. I mean, not a super big believer in, Santos either, but that's where we are. Let's see. Welterweight, Leon Shabazian. Edmund brother? Have to double check that. And Levon Chokeli. Chokeli? Where are you from, sir? Georgia. Country, Georgia, not state. So let's have a quick look. Leon Shabazian, 12-4, 4-fight winning streak. This is his UFC debut. He had a loss on the Contender Series in 2019 to Phil Rowe. All right, and I know I'm mispronouncing Chokoli there, so I apologize. I'll figure it out when I hear it. He is 14-3. Well, no contest thrown in there for good measure. His UFC debut here. He's coming off a win. He lost in Bellator in 2024 to Lorenz Larkin. He had an okay Bellator run. okay at 4-3. He beat in Bellator that was any good. Okay, not too many people. Losing to Lorenz Larkin in 2024 isn't a great sign. But it's not the end of the world either. Let's have a quick look. Do we not have odds for this one? I bet we don't. Hmm. I'm just slightly more familiar with Chocoli overall. I'm gonna go through and double check a few of these when I'm not as sleep deprived as I am right now. And I think kicking everything off, we're going to have Shane Collins and another Georgian, Otari Tenzilovi. Yeah, I'm probably butchering that. Collins is undefeated, 7-0. Coming off a win in Uriah Faber's promotion. He's had a few of those, actually. Yeah, good for him. Faber's promotion is not a bad one. Tenzilovi is 10-1. He had a split decision loss on the Contender Series in September of 24. He's coming off a win, though. Alrighty. That is, I don't know. It's another one I'm gonna have to double check on. Like once they have odds out on it and whatnot, that I can like get a better feel for. I gotta double check a few of their. I can probably find each of their last fights, but I'll double check it. At the moment, that's gonna go with Tanzilovi, and I think that is where we're going to call it. So Saturday, MMA Zone 411mania.com. I will have coverage of that. So stop by, say hello. It is always appreciated. All right, that is pretty much going to do it for me. I'm going to check the old social medias. Last chance to throw a question or a comment in there and to get me to react to it. Let's just have a quick look. Because I don't know anything new is going to be coming out, but barring that, I think we're just going to get out of here. I'm not going to scroll too long into this. Now, Dana White claiming that the UFC can't afford to be at the White House again. That's an absolute load of crap. Look, they probably couldn't do this every week. But like you're getting $1.1 billion a year from just one of your broadcast partners, guys. Like you actually could afford to do this more than just as a one-off. Yeah, I think we're going to be done here. My headset's also starting to make noise at me that it's ready to be recharged. So On that particular note, sorry for the rambling at the end of the UFC Freedom 250 stuff. I'm sleep deprived, and if I didn't talk about some of the production stuff, it was never going to get talked about, and then I would just feel like a complete idiot. So let's get out of here. That was what, 40-ish. All right. As for plugs, later today, technically Monday, on Damn You Hollywood, I will be reviewing Disclosure Day. Right? Yes, indeedy. I will be reviewing that with Mark Radulich over on the W2M network. Again, specifically Damn You Hollywood. That is my movie review podcast over there. Yeah, it's just going to be me and Mark, so that'll be interesting. Haven't seen it yet. We'll have to make some time to do that, but it's not getting good reviews. So we'll have a go at that. All right. Is there any other? I don't think I have any other podcast this week, right? That's not me. That's not me. No. Okay. So that's it for my podcasting this week. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. You're pretty obviously aware of that, I imagine. WWE SmackDown on Fridays, UFC events on Saturdays, or the occasional Sunday, apparently. So tune in for any and all that. I will have SmackDown on Friday. We're moving towards Night of Champions, and SmackDown is still the dregs. It's not. I wish it was better. I really wish it was better. They've not had a strong series of events. That's just the reality of it. I want it to be better. I don't like crapping on the show. I'm a critical person. I'm hired to be critical about these things. So I'm not going to sit here and like apologize for saying something that I think is bad and telling you why I think it's bad. I wish it was better. I really do. I would rather have a good time Friday nights than a bad time. But I can't control the quality. So, yeah. Check that out on Friday, UFC on Saturday, and we will be back here next week around this same time to review Horiguchi versus Kape and is that the 26th? The 27th. Oh, they're in Azerbaijan. Right. We will preview UFC Fight Night 280. The UFC is back in Azerbaijan. Main event, good fight. Rafael Fiziev and Manuel Torres. What else do we got? Shara Magomedov and Michelle Pereira. They're trying to give Shara an easy win. Nazim Sadikov. Oh, he was supposed to have a much better fight than that. Oscar Mabayev and Charles Johnson's a good fight. Ikram Alaskarov and Bruno Ferreira will probably be fine. I don't care about Abus and Mikhail Lukshezhuk. I don't care about anything Abus Magomedov does. Trying to find a replacement for Ismail Narudiev. Neil Dunchenko's original opponent fell out. That's unfortunate. I was looking forward to that one. It's an okay card. When the UFC actually has to sell tickets and go on the road for this stuff, they bring a decent product. That one looks like a decent fight night for, Azerbaijan. We will give that the full preview next week. My headset is yelling at me again because I've been doing this for way too long today. That, however, will do it for this episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Thank you all very, very much for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe. Turn on the bell notification, all that jazz. Y'all know the drill. So thank you again. I appreciate the heck out of you. I've been going for way too long at this. It is way too early in the morning, and I apologize for getting surly and incoherent down the stretch. You're watching a very, very sleep-deprived person. Try to do one of these. Try to do a podcast. Hopefully, if nothing else, this was at least a little bit amusing. So thank you all very much. See you next week. Until then, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave. Next time.